But gentle parenting has also gotten a bad rap because lots of folks see it as just a way to let your kids get away with murder. They sometimes see it as parents who
Yeah.
just aren't good at limit setting, or maybe even avoid setting limits with their kids. But I do think, as I said, you can blend a really gentle style with also being an effective limit setter when the situation calls for it. So you can put both those words together, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah, I want to unpack that. I kind of want to start though with like, I love how you mentioned that you use gentle parenting to raise your four daughters. And you happen to have four children that were fairly, I mean, I don't think parenting is easy for anyone, but certainly easier than maybe other families that you've seen in raising their kids. And I myself and a lot of the people that I work with and coach and that listen to this show have children that are like yours, that are fairly easy to raise and parent, and also might have another one who's a little bit spicier or more defiant or who has stronger opinions or what have you. Can you just talk to us a little bit about, like, maybe to the parent who's like, man, I have one that's just like knows how to push every button and test every boundary and can be disrespectful, and like, instead of just labeling them as, you know, the hard one or the challenging one or what have you, can you talk a little bit even to like the nature nurture? Like, how do we end up, we think we parent kids the same, but how do we end up with kids who feel really difficult to parent?
Sure. Well, I thought about this for a long time, and I'm the developer of something
Yeah.
called intensive family focused therapy. And as the name implies, it's a family based model of mental health care. And that's for kids who have pretty serious problems and have received all kinds of prior treatment but never responded to it. So
Wow.
the way I look at it is, what is different about these kids? Why do some kids just come into the world being more challenging or more stubborn or more prone to being sensitive or have emotion dysregulation? And in every
Yeah.
family that I've ever worked with where there's siblings, in the vast majority of those situations, the siblings are totally normal, if you want to use that word. They're typical. They're fairly
Sure.
easy to parent kids. But then you have the one that presents for treatment. It's like, well, what happened? They're being raised by the same parents in the same household. And my conclusion is that they just come into the world that way, that they are
Yeah.
temperamentally different than other kids. We can use the word neurodivergent if you want, but that's how they are, and they didn't ask to be that way, but they are. And the thing about parenting is, if you've got a relatively easy to parent kid, the normal things that people do, the typical interventions that a parent might have, those don't work very well on the harder kids. And so my work, at
Yeah.
least a large part of it, is teaching parents what to do that does work with harder kids. And that's what my book,
Yeah.
Parenting Reimagined, is all about. It's a different skill set, and it requires different responses and different interventions. And it's a pretty specific skill set that I don't think parents are generally exposed to. And many therapists don't know how to do it either. I've been fortunate because I've been doing this for 40 years now. And everything I teach the families, everything I do, these are battle tested interventions because I've used them over and over and over again, and I know that they do work.
Yeah.
But most people don't have access to that information. So that's what I try to do, is bring that information out into the world so that any parent can use it. That's what the book is for.
Wow. Okay. So, guys, if you're listening and you have a child who feels difficult and hard to parent, we'll link his book in the show notes below so you guys can go ahead and click it and get it and check it out. But I'd love to talk through some of that on the air while people are listening. For those parents who are like, man, it's just so hard. Like, I just feel always so triggered and they don't listen to anything I say and they talk back and they, all these things. One, maybe like, let's start with, what would you say to them? Maybe like a different way of even just thinking about that dynamic. And then maybe we could talk about some approaches that you found to be effective that they could try.
Absolutely. And I've listened to a lot of past podcasts where folks come on and, they talk about parenting strategies and what to do with challenging kids. I like the word spicy. I think that's pretty cool. But usually what they do is they
Yeah.
talk kind of as an overview. Well, it's really important that you have a close connection to your child and you really focus on the relationship and lean in and listen. Those are all great things to do. I have no objections to any of those things.
Yeah.
But it lacks specifics. Like, what do I actually do?
Yeah.
What do say if my kid is
Yeah.
yelling
How?
at
I
me.
want those things too. Yeah.
Yes. And so what I want to do for your listeners today, as much as we can, given the time constraints, is I want this to be meaty. I want it to have as many concrete examples as possible. And you have kids, so if you have an example from your own life, you can throw it at me and I'll tell you what to do about it. Or I can come up with
Yeah.
examples too. But I really want people to walk away after having listened to this. Well, I can do that, or at least in the example, all right, that makes sense. Let me give that a try. So I want this to be practical above all else.
I love that. Okay. Let's start with I'm just gonna like think of some things that I hear over and over and over. So one common frustration that I hear is that my kids just don't listen to me. Like I'll repeat myself over and over. And I have that one kid that I could be like right in front of them and ask them, hey, look at me. I've asked you to go do this 3 times. And they'll just like like stare right through me and they don't care that I'm asking them to do anything. They can't
Well,
be bothered. They don't care if I tell them. Tell me.
well, sure, because they don't want to do it. Like often parents ask their kids to do things and then the kid doesn't want to do it. People ask me to do things that they
Yeah.
don't want to do sometimes. So I promise you, it's not that they're not
Yep.
listening. Trust me, they're listening to exactly what you're saying. They're just not doing it. So the question really is,
Yes.
how do you get a kid to do something that they are disinclined to do? And that's going to vary a little
Okay.
bit by age. Do you have an age range in mind? Do you want me to speak to?
The specific I'm thinking of is like an 8-year-old girl.
Okay. So first of all, you should never have to make a request more than once. So if you find yourself, hey, come on, I told you to clean your room more than once or twice, then what you're doing is you're badgering, which tends to irritate kids. And plus, if you've had to ask them 3 or 4 times to do something and they're not doing it, then there's a good chance you should actually change course and do something different, right? So
Okay.
again, I really think it's important that when parents ask their kids to do things, you shouldn't have to ask more than maybe twice a second reminder. So with an 8-year-old, what would I do? First, I'd establish that culture within my family that I'm not going to ask you 4 or 5 times to do things. I'm going to ask you
Okay.
once or maybe
Yeah.
twice. And if after the once or twice the thing isn't done, I'm going to respond to that in some way that I think has a high probability of getting the kid to get up and move to go to their room. So usually with younger kids, what I recommend is setting up some version of timeout. And timeout can be used in a
Okay.
variety of different ways. Most of the time, parents who have tried timeout, they abandon it because it doesn't work very well for them. Usually because the kid won't take the time out, which is not terribly surprising because if you just asked her to go to her room 5 times and she's not doing that, why in God's name would she take a timeout? It's impossible. But in the
Right.
book, I offer a version of timeout that I've used for years and years and years, and it works exceptionally well. So I won't take up time in the podcast
Oh my gosh.
describing
Tell it.
what I
Yeah.
but basically, it's so effective that the vast majority of kids, when you say, please take a time out for, in this case, not listening, they get up and they go right to their bedroom, which is the timeout spot for most kids. They do it quietly. They don't argue or complain. And so I'm using this on a regular basis with the younger kids so they understand that if I ask them to do something, and
Mhm.
I always ask in the nicest of ways. I never bark orders at kids, or I never say, get up and go to your
Yeah.
room. It's, hey, would you mind, sweetheart? In the next couple of minutes, your room needs a little bit of attention, so I'd appreciate if you could head down there and straighten it up a little bit, right? Lots of words
Yeah.
that sound super friendly.
Yeah.
But the kids know if they don't do what I ask them to do, the very next thing I'm going to say is, hey, please take a time out for not listening. And if you do that over and
Yeah.
over and over and repeat it over, weeks and weeks and months, eventually what happens is the kid comes to understand they're not going to be asked 5 times to do something. Here's the other problem with asking a
Yeah.
kid 5 times to do something is you get frustrated. Like how many times you have to
Yes.
say, could you please pick up your shoes and put them in your closet? Because when you do that over and
Yeah.
over again, you're going to get frustrated, right? And then what
Yes.
happens is you're going to raise your voice. We're going to be a
Yeah.
lot sharper with the kid. First you ask nicely if you could, would you mind taking your shoes down to your room? But after 6 or 7 times, take your shoes down to your room, right? And often when you bark at a kid, they will actually then comply because
Yeah.
raising your voice at kids scares them. And they actually know at that point you're serious about this. And then if the kid actually complies after a raised voice, that is teaching you that raising your voice works, right? You've been reinforced for raising your voice, which means you're more
Yeah.
likely to do that again in the future. The other thing it does is it teaches the kid that they don't have to listen to you the first 4 or 5 times, that they're not taking you
Yeah.
seriously. So when you ask in a reasonable voice, they just ignore you or pretend to be ignoring you until you raise your voice, and then in their mind it's like, okay, now mom's serious, I better go. But nobody likes yelling at
Yeah.
you. Nobody does. So you have to come up with strategies and interventions to get your kids to do what you've asked them to do without ever once raising your voice or having to repeat yourself
Yeah.
over and over again. And the book is chock full of these strategies.
I think that's so good and so helpful. And I think part of what, even as we were talking about what gentle parenting is, like there was nothing in what you just explained that was just completely permissive or letting them quote unquote like get away with it or whatever parents are like worried about, right? It was like actually the expectation is being made clear that in this home I'm not going to ask you 5 times to do something, and that if you
100%.
choose not to do what I'm asking, right, like there's the boundary there that's being expressed and clear, and then reinforced over time so they actually buy in.
Yes, and if a parent listening to this, maybe at least so far, isn't great at asking their kids to do things once, but not more than once, even if you fall into the habit of badgering your kids, even say you're raising a teenager, 15 or 16-year-old, and you're still yelling at them to get them to do things, it's never too late. You can always adopt these
Yeah.
strategies. And at any point, you can implement them and make the situation at home substantially better than many parents have it now.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder. It's never too far gone, right? It's never too late.
It's true.
That's so good. What's another common scenario that you see a lot that parents struggle with that you
Well,
have a response
well,
for, a strategy for?
gosh, just there's so many things. There's like difficulties of getting ready for school in the morning. There's problems.
Yes, yes,
Kids,
that's another one.
that sounds like one that rings a bell with you. Getting kids to do chores and
Yeah,
help out around the house. Getting kids to do their homework. Getting kids to not fight with their siblings. Getting kids to be able to speak predominantly in a respectful way to their parents or to their
yeah,
siblings or to their teachers or to the neighbor or whoever. Those are the big ones. So it's
yeah,
not following directions. It's disrespect, not getting things done that are important, and then not being ready for school on time and having a lot of chaos in the mornings too. So cover all those in the book. There's a chapter on every one of those things. You want to pick one and I'll walk you through it.
yeah. Let's do the morning one.
Morning. So a couple things. First and foremost, I recommend that parents get their kids up with plenty of time, probably more time than any human being would need to get ready in the morning.
So
When
good.
I used to
Yes.
work in group homes, residential programs, I was responsible for waking up 6 kids who had huge behavior problems. I was by myself, and I had to get them all out the door on time, and they all went to different schools. So it was a huge, complicated puzzle. And I had it down to a science. This is very important to me that A, there's no chaos in the morning. I don't want any chaos in the morning. I don't want people rushing
Yeah.
around and getting stressed out, whether that's me or them. And it was important to me that I get the kids to school on time because I'm trying to teach a value of you show up places when you're supposed to. So these strategies are what I
Yes.
talk about in the book, and that is the first one: is get them up early, and not at 4 in the morning, obviously, but early enough so that if there's a problem or an issue or a meltdown, that you can get them through that thing and still not be rushed. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I highly recommend that parents work to get their kids up to an alarm clock, and kids from about 5 years old and up are capable of waking up to an alarm. Now, what I hear most commonly
Oh
that
wow.
I say that is, well, my kid sleeps through their alarm and they don't get up to an alarm. I've tried this and it doesn't work. And there's usually a couple problems to go with that. One, they're up too late at night, probably on a phone with an older kid. So if you can get them to bed and
Yeah.
to sleep at a decent hour, they'll wake up fairly naturally. But every kid says they can't get up to an alarm, which is just nonsense because what they really want is their parents to wake them up so they can go back to sleep and get another 10 minutes and have their parents come back into the room and so on and so on and so on. And now you're late and everybody's stressed. The kid is going to feel rushed and badgered, and the parent's going to feel like, oh my God, we have to walk out the door in 10 minutes. But if you
Yeah.
can get every kid up to an alarm, I promise you, despite what they say, and you also want kids to be independent in the morning, as independent as possible
Mhm.
given their age. So, a teenager
Good.
should be 100% independent in the morning. They're up to their alarm. They move themselves through the morning routine without any nudging or prompting by their parents. They're ready on
Yeah.
time, and ready is backpack by the door, everything completely done, hair, teeth, 100%. And all you then have to do is be kind of this nice presence in the morning, which is good morning, how did you sleep? Or can I make you something for breakfast?
Yeah.
That's it. That's your entire involvement. And with little kids, they need more help. For example, a 5-year-old's going to need more help. They might need help putting their shoes on or tying them. They might need help, I don't know, getting their teeth brushed. But if you work towards
Yeah.
independence, that's ultimately what you want. And when can a kid be completely independent? 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that vicinity. But as I said, even little
Yeah.
kids can get up to an alarm. And so the way you work that is you get out of the habit of nudging. Because if you start nudging a kid, hey, it's time to get your shoes on. With most of the families that I work with, they resist. It's like, I don't want to go to
Yeah.
school today. Those shoes don't fit me very well. They're ugly. Why do I have to wear shoes every day? And those are red herrings. Those are just things kids say to get their parents knocked off course, right? So, but you don't want to nudge because every time you nudge, you get resistance. So let go of that and just create the expectation. I have every confidence that you can get up to an alarm and you can get yourself ready on time. And then you build in incentives. And with little kids, the incentive would be some kind of screen time, whether that's watching TV, which is what I did with my girls back in the day. It could be a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
time on the iPad, but that's the treat, that's the prize. And it's only
Yeah.
accessible if the kid, once they are completely 100% ready, then the iPad comes out for 20 minutes or what have you, where the TV goes on. With older
Yeah.
kids, the incentive is you're only going to get your phone once you're 100% ready. And any day we walk out the door late because you're not ready, that's not going to be a day that you get your phone. So if you want to take your phone to school, you got to be ready. And if you mess up today and you're late, totally fine. Sometimes we're just late. I'm going to need you to be on
Yeah.
time tomorrow in order to get your phone. So powerful incentive for teenagers. So the message to the kids, the faster you get ready, the more TV time you have or the more iPad time that you have. And then you just
Yeah.
let them figure it out. You help when you need to with younger kids, always with the goal of making kids more independent across time and less dependent on you. So that's the morning routine. And I think that works for the vast majority of kids.
Yep. I could see that. I
And you
love
shine
it.
that to your kids to school. If they're late, they're late, and they get to walk in and explain to the teacher why they're late. So when you're late, that's between you and the school.
That's right. Natural consequences are such good teachers, just like hands off and letting them feel that, right? Instead of trying to fix it and stressing
Yeah.
ourselves out so much. Um, a couple of things that I'm curious about. One, we last year, I think maybe we got this like family calendar that has a way to like incentivize our kids to get through their morning checklist and whatever. And they gather and collect stars and then they can like redeem those stars for little treats. Very similar to what you're talking about. I'm sure there are people listening that are like, yeah, but I don't want to have to bribe my kids to do stuff. And what I'm hearing is that it's different, right? Can you just talk a little bit to the person that's listening and that's like, well, that's okay, but I don't want to have to bribe my kids. They should quote unquote, just be able to do the things that I ask them to
Of
do
course they
in the
should, but
morning or
they
whatever.
don't. They should be able to do, but they don't. So
I
you get
know. That's
stuck on
right.
that
Yeah.
philosophically, I suppose. You're just going to drive yourself crazy if you do that. So first of all, it sounds like what you're doing with your kids is working fine. I'm not a big fan of sticker charts and things like that. I've never gotten them to work very well, or they work for a while and then they lose their potency, and so you're always trying to come up with something new, which feels like a lot of work to me. I would rather stick to simplicity because it's easier to stick to
Yeah.
a simple plan than a harder plan. And I do think the one that I've described, giving them access to some sort of preferred activity, TV, iPad, or whatever, that's
Mm-hmm.
super simple and very straightforward.
Yeah.
And I don't think iPads or phones will ever lose their reinforcement value. In fact, they get more and more powerful as kids get older, when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
So is that
So
bribing
true.
kids? I don't think so. Don't we all kind of do that? Isn't it work before play?
Yeah.
Right? Don't we all
Yep.
take care of our responsibilities and then we allow ourselves access to the fun things? So to
Mm.
let your kid watch TV in the morning once they're completely ready, that doesn't feel like a bribe to me. That just feels like life.
Yeah.
So a
Yeah.
bribe
I
would
agree.
be, well, I tell you what, if you get all of your homework done tonight, um, then I'll give you $25. That feels like a bribe to me. Like you should have to pay your kids to
Yes.
do their homework. They should just do their homework. And you should engineer the environment in a way where they are incentivized to do their homework. All humans respond to incentives, right? That's why we
Yeah.
have a job and people pay us, because money is an incentive. And kids are no different.
Hmm.
They respond to the same incentives, or respond to incentives in a similar way as adults. So I don't see it as right,
Yeah.
and I just see it, well, do your stuff and then you can have fun. And it works great. That the kids respond to that really well.
Yeah, that's so good. That's such a good distinction, and it's so true. As you were speaking, I was thinking actually of this conversation I had with a client of mine a couple weeks ago, and she has a child that feels very difficult to parent, and she's like, and this is something that I think we hear a lot too: connect before you correct. And she's like, I'm trying to like connect with her, my daughter, before I correct her, and I like get down on her level. I think her daughter's 3, and I look her in the eyes, and I try to it brought something up that I want to ask you about. Do our spicy kids need a different type of connection? And why is that so important than maybe our kids who are
I
feel
don't
easier
know.
to parent?
It's a great question. I don't know if they need a different kind of connection. They certainly need connection, like love and affection and attention,
Yeah.
and playing with them and joking with them. They need all those things, but so does any kid. I think if I was going to
Yeah.
correct a 3-year-old, I don't think I would get down and look them in the eye. I just don't think I would. My instincts tell me just like, what did the 3-year-old do? Maybe they just smacked their brother. I don't know what it is. It could be all kinds of different things. But I just don't know that I would do
Yeah.
that. I'd be super casual about it with a young kid. I would say, hey, sweetheart, it's not okay to hit your brother. Because, yes, he makes you mad sometimes. But I would really prefer that from now on, don't do that. That's all I would say. So that's a verbal correction for sure. And
Uh-huh.
it's also setting a limit, which is it's not okay to hit your brother. Will that
Right.
all by itself stop the hitting? Heck no. Probably not. Well, some kids, yes, easy kids, it would stop it. Other kids, it wouldn't.
Yep.
So, but I have to start with that, right? But
Yeah.
if I'm going
Okay.
to correct a kid on a behavior, which is what parents just need to do, that's part of parenting, is
Yeah.
correcting your kids or telling them, no, that's not okay. You know, what you should be doing the rest of the time is building that relationship. So you probably heard this metaphor, it's been around for a long time. Relationships are like bank accounts. So every time you do something fun with a kid, every time you attend to them, every time you cuddle them, every time you do something warm and fuzzy and enjoyable, it's like making a deposit into that bank account, right? And if the bank
Yes.
account is generally full, you can make a correction, which is a slight withdrawal from that account. But then if you build it right back up again, you can make those corrections and it does no damage to the relationship whatsoever. In fact, it's
So
good for parents to tell their kids no. I think kids
yeah.
expect that. They want and need limits. And if they have parents who don't set limits with them, that is very
Yeah.
anxiety provoking for them. Plus, they'll, they'll just drive their parents crazy and not do a thing that they say without limit setting. But the problem is with
Yeah.
harder kids, because they get into trouble all of the time, you're constantly making withdrawals from that account. And then it becomes not just a low balance, but then it becomes overdrawn. And then the next correction you try to make, all hell breaks loose because the kid feels like they're constantly the center of negative attention. And then you get a lot of
Right.
negative behavior simply because there's so much distance between the parents and the kid. So you just have to work harder at that. You have to find moments where
Yeah.
the kid isn't misbehaving or driving you crazy. I'm a great believer in using humor with kids. I do it all the time. I did it with my daughters and I do it with other people's kids. It's such an easy way to
Yes.
connect. You can just be passing them in the kitchen and for no reason whatsoever, you say something super funny to them. And that's a way of saying, I see you. I notice you're here.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the time out of my day to joke with you for no other reason than I love you. And I'm a great believer in
Yeah.
absurd humor. I would probably pass them, it depends on the age of the kid. I probably would pass them and say, oh, well, guess what? Our dog ran away and joined the circus yesterday. Can you believe it? I would say something like that because obviously the dog didn't do that. And the kid is going to go, what? She did? And I said, well, circus is fun. I can't really blame her for running away and going to the circus. I do have to admit, I thought about that, doing that from time to time. And your listeners can't see me, but I'm smiling and I look absurd as I'm doing it. And so the kid will start to riff back. It's like, I don't think dogs run away to go to the circus. Ah, you're probably right. What was I thinking? There she is over there in the corner. So it's fun. And that's a deposit into the bank account for sure. And you can do that so many times.
Mm.
And no kid I've ever met misbehaves all the time. Even the hardest kids I've ever worked with don't do that. They're probably actively
Come on.
misbehaving 10% of the time at most, which leaves 90% of the time
Yeah.
free to build a relationship and be funny with them.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. Um, I think, yeah, humor and then just like a playfulness, right? Or gamifying or like just making things fun, I think is such an, maybe it's not even underrated, but I think like it's such a power tool that we have as parents that we don't exercise nearly as often as we might be able to.
Well, sure, it breaks tension, right? If you can make a kid laugh, you can't be mad and laughing at the same time. It's very difficult to do that. Would it be okay? And I know you have
Yep.
more questions that I don't want to hijack, but can we talk about disrespect? Because I imagine a lot of parents deal with that.
Yes,
Okay. All right,
absolutely.
cool. So what is
Yeah.
disrespect? It's, you're stupid. I hate you. It's, why do I have to do that sort of thing. With older kids, it's cursing.
Yeah.
It's, well, F you. I don't have to listen to you.
Yeah.
So I'm a great believer that kids should be respectful towards their parents. I'm obviously not the only person who thinks that, but it's a value that I want to instill within my children. And I do that from a very young age. You're establishing a climate that there are ways to speak to your loved ones that are just not okay. And I don't believe
Yep.
kids should yell at their parents. Well, of course, I don't believe parents should yell at their kids. I believe kids should be, reasonably respectful. They can get mad and irritated, which is, oh, God, that's so unfair. I'm fine with that. That's not
Yeah.
disrespect. That's just venting. Um,
Yeah.
I think that with loved ones, we should take extra care to be gentle and loving towards them. And
Mhm.
so I don't think kids should talk to their parents in a disrespectful way. And I think if your listeners, you're one of those parents where their kid does do that, I think it's time to stop that. So first and foremost, it's about establishing a new culture and setting limits, which is, you know what, it's not okay for you to talk to me that way. And I won't ever have a conversation with you
Yeah.
when you're screaming at me. And so if a kid starts to become elevated like that, particularly if it's an attack towards you, that's the line that we teach parents, which is to say, I will not have a conversation with you when you're yelling at me. And if the kid doesn't immediately
Okay.
dial it back into a non-yelling voice, some do, some will back it up and do it right. They just walk away from them. And you disengage and
Okay.
stay disengaged until they're fully calmed back down again. And for most kids, that's probably 20 minutes to maybe even 2 hours. But then once they're calm, you let them come to you, and every kid will eventually come to you. They usually will say something off topic, like, what's for dinner? And then I'll say something like, we're having this for dinner. But before we have a long conversation about that, are you ready to have a different sort of conversation with me now without the yelling? And most kids will say yes at that point. So you establish that nobody yells at each other in our family. It's just one of
Hmm.
our family rules that we don't raise our voice or speak unkindly. And then you have to know what to do when the disrespect comes out. So if the kid says, I think
Yeah.
hate you, you have to know what to do. And that's very age specific. Again, if it's a little kid, I would send them to timeout, which will immediately stop the behavior and disrupt it. If it's an older kid, I would leverage some privilege that they have. So if I was talking to a teenager who started to yell at me, I could disengage, or I could say something along the lines of, look, if you expect to have time on your phone this afternoon, I highly recommend you speak to me in a different way. It is not okay for you to yell at me and call me those names. So do you want to
Yeah.
try this again and hang on to your phone? Or would you prefer to put your phone up on the kitchen counter for a while until you can be nice to me again? Those are very powerful interventions. Teenagers will do anything to hang on to their phone. And you could just temporarily pause it, right? To say, well, if you're not able to be nice to me right now, you can be mad. That's fine with me. Everybody gets mad, but you don't have to direct your anger at me.
Yeah.
You can be mad, but you can't be mean. That's an easy tagline for kids. And so if they can dial it back and be decent again, I'll keep in the conversation with them. But if they can't, I will not be mistreated, and I'll make that very
Yeah.
clear. And so keep doing it if that's what you want. I'm only responsible for my behavior, not yours. And I'm going to tell
Right.
you how I'm going to respond to that disrespect. You're free to keep doing it if you want, but just know you're not going to
Yeah.
hang on to your phone or your privileges if you keep that up. And they're going to be temporarily paused until you have been nice to me again for a while, or at least neutral for a while. And the
Yeah.
pauses can be as brief as a couple of hours or as long as a couple of days, but it's highly effective. So that, no
That's
disrespect. Don't let your
really,
kids talk to you that way. They don't want to talk to you like that anyway. They know it's wrong.
yeah.
And really, they're just
Yeah.
waiting for you to stop them.
Yeah. There's so many things I love about that. I love how clear it is about what will and will not be tolerated, like in our home or toward me or whatever. And I also love the invitation to just face reality that we cannot control what our kids say or do, right? And I think so many parents like get caught up in that. And what you're offering is the boundary around our own response and behavior when our kids do speak like that, which is so helpful and powerful. I kind of want to go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, go ahead. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
I kind of wanted to, I guess before I let you go, a lot of these approaches or all of these approaches, I think are so helpful and they're so practical. And I can also imagine parents listening and are like, man, if I'm feeling grounded and at peace and like well rested and fed and like whatever, like I think there are days where I could actually pull this off. And so often I like have the script or I have the plan or what I'm going to say when this happens. And then I just become so enraged when my kid talks back or whatever it is that I'm just like seeing red and I lose it. Right. And then I can't even do the things that I know I should be doing. What do you teach parents in those situations about getting themselves to a place where they can actually start putting your tools into practice, where they're regulated enough to do so?
Well, parents generally only get enraged when the kid is not doing what you ask them to do. Most parents don't
Okay.
go from 0 to 60. They don't start with rage. They start with being reasonable, or at least as reasonable as they can be. So if you're getting that angry with a kid, very likely what's happening is you are not implementing enough strategies to stop that behavior from occurring in the first place. That's why parents get angry. Now, we all have bad days. We all have days where our bandwidth is low. You're not going to be the best version of yourself, nor were your kid. They have bad days too. But to change these situations, really what it calls for is that you inject a certain amount of time and energy into the problem to correct it. It's like an investment, right? A little bit of pain now buys you a ton of relief down the road. And so, yes, there are lots of days where we didn't sleep very well the night before. We got loads of other things on our mind. Maybe we just had an argument with our spouse or partner. But, parenting never stops. It's a 24-hour job, as you know. And so for me, the frame of mind that I put myself in when I'm standing in front of a kid who's not listening or being mean or disrespectful is, I think of it like a chess game. It's very intellectually interesting to me because it's like, okay, they're saying and doing this. Now, what am I going to do? What tool am I going to pull from my toolbox? The large menu that I have in front of me. It's like, well, they just made a move in the game. And so now it's my turn to move. And good chess players don't get mad, knock over the board,
Right.
they don't yell and scream, right? They look at their opponent's move and go, well, that's interesting. That was a good one. Well, I'm going to think about my next move, and I'm going to counter it in a way that I think has the highest probability of changing the behavior. So that's the frame of mind I put myself in.
I love
so
that.
It's like, I love playing chess. And so it takes out a lot of the emotional energy behind it. It's not personal. It's just a word.
Right. That's a big
I don't think that your opponent's going to say that very well. But you get the idea, which is, well, what am I going to do? And by the way, I think when you learn all of this stuff, your kids are eventually going to be hopelessly outgunned. There's just no way that they can win any of these things because you know exactly what to do step by step. Would it be okay if and I know this wasn't the question you asked, and if there's not time, that's okay. Can we talk about how not to argue with your kids?
Yes, please.
So there's never a reason to argue with a kid, ever, whether that's a little kid or a teenager. And I don't believe that parents ever have to get into an argument. What is an argument? It's when two people are trying to convince the other one that they're right and the other person is wrong. That's all an argument is. If you watch anybody argue, it's exactly that. Most people are dug into their positions trying to convince the other person to see it their way. So by definition, it's only an argument when two people are speaking because they're trading a back and forth. That's what an argument is by definition. So if one person stops speaking, it is no longer an argument, then it's the other person monologuing, right? And let them get up on their soapbox, who cares? So the way you do that with kids, again, is you establish a climate. I'm not going to argue with you. This is not a debate. This is not a back and forth. This is not you trying to grind me down to get me to change my mind. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm going to tell you what I want and need from you, and I'm going to do it in a reasonable way. Sometimes I'll negotiate if I think there's room for negotiation. Like, I'll negotiate over a curfew, but I won't negotiate whether you should be doing your homework. That's a non-starter.
Yeah.
So the kid will argue you to death. Why? Because they're hoping to get you to see it their way, or at the very least, they're mad about something and they're just spoiling for a fight. So if I'm asking a kid to do something or not do something, and they start to come back at me with various different arguments, I'm going to stop speaking. I'm not going to argue. I'm going to say, look, I'm not going to argue with you about this. I need you to go clean your room. And then I would turn around and walk away from them. Because when you walk away from somebody, it clearly indicates that I'm done and the conversation is over. Where parents get themselves into trouble is they will argue endlessly with their kids too. Well, I need to show them that I'm right, or don't they understand why it's important to do their homework? Well, of course they understand. They just don't want to do their homework, and no amount of persuasion is going to get them to do algebra. What you can do is say, look, homework is expected of you, and I expect you to do your homework every day and not have any missing assignments. I'm not going to fight with you about this. So when you come home from school, I expect it to be done. And you can do it anytime you want before bedtime, not right up against bedtime because I want you to be sleepy, but you can do it anytime. And if your homework isn't done that night, you've lost your phone privileges until you have finished it. Or the alternative to that plan is the kid comes home to no screens enabled of any kind. And then you say, I'm happy to turn your screens back on whenever you get your homework done. And you don't take their word for it, because sometimes kids don't tell the truth about their homework. You have to verify it in some way. And the sooner you get your homework done, the sooner you get access to your phone. Again, a powerful incentive. But there's no reason to argue about anything. You're the parent. They're not. And so just recognize that as the game that they're playing. And you are right. You just don't have to talk somebody into the fact that you're right, because it's a losing game, one that nobody comes out ahead. And when you argue with somebody, it elevates, and now people are screaming. Look, I'm not going to fight with you about this. You say it exactly like that. I'm not going to fight with you about this. Smiling, shaking your head. It works really well.
Wow, I love that. It's so, again, also this is simple, right? It's just like not engaging. Walk away, clearly state, I'm not going to engage in you with this or argue with you about this. It's so helpful. Amazing. I'm going to leave you with a final thought or word you want to share with the people listening. For those who are raising difficult, spicy ones, and are really excited to grab your book and start putting some of this work into practice, what's a final thought you want to leave them with?
I love those kids. I mean, I love all kids, obviously, but I especially love these strong-willed oppositional kids because, man, they've got grit. They've got grit in spades. Now, they may not be applying that grit in the way that I would prefer. Like if they applied that same strong-willed nature to getting good grades, well, everybody would be happy with that, but they don't. They're just these amazing human beings that, for whatever reason, have come into the world just being different, not different in a bad way, just different, right? They're just unique and I think extraordinarily fun to be around. Again, I like behavioral challenges. It's interesting to me. So it's like, bring it on, man. Like, okay, let's see what happens here. And I respond in the nicest of ways possible. But I love them, and they're just square pegs in round holes. If they're square peg, the world can't be made into a square space. It just doesn't work like that. So my job is to teach them how to exist in the universe in a way that gets them through their lives in the best way possible. And if they someday find some occupation or interest that capitalizes on those strengths, then that's a very happy ending to that story. Folks with ADHD, they drive their parents crazy for a number of different reasons, but they actually can thrive in the workplace if you put them in the right work environment. And they do best environments, as you might not be surprised to hear, where there's a lot of stimulation and a lot of variety. So putting an adult in an ADHD situation that's interesting to them, where they have to switch it up, meet multiple demands simultaneously, they love that because it keeps their brain super stimulated. So you just got to find the right fit for this particular kid and not want to kill them along the way. You got to find a way to connect with them and peacefully coexist. It's not always easy to do, but they want that. They want you to love on them hard, even when they're misbehaving. Right? Deal with the behavior problem, you reset, you go right back to life again. And every day is a new opportunity to do it differently.
Oh, come on. If you are raising a spicy one, be encouraged by that. Beautiful. Okay, where can everyone connect with you? I'm going to link the book in the show notes, but
Oh,
where
thank
else?
you.
Just the
Absolutely.
website.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm easily fine. I'm on Instagram. It's on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Probably the best starting place for parents would be my website. And if you could put it in the show notes, that would be awesome. I'll say it really fast here. It's just IFFT.org, which stands for Intensive Family Focused Therapy.org. I've got all kinds of resources for parents. Every podcast I do goes up there. This one will be up there too. I'm a contributor to Psychology Today, so I write articles for Psychology Today. A bunch of my research is posted there. And then I have all kinds of other things as well. So that's any parent listening, if you want more resources, that's the starting place. And if you want even more than that, you can turn to, I have 2 books actually. Those I think would help most folks out quite a bit.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll link all of that in the show notes for you guys so you can check it out. Thanks again. Thanks for sharing everything you've learned. Thanks for making it so practical. And just thanks for your time pouring into us today. Appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure, Michelle. It's been a pleasure to be here, and you're a great interview. You asked all kinds of really interesting questions. So thank you for the honor and privilege of spending time with you.